Hey, this is Ryan Gunn with Aptitude 8, and today I'm joined by Jaime Jarosz, a consultant on our services team, who's going to walk us through a solution her team created for tracking product interest in HubSpot. All right, so Jamie, tell me about this client that you've been working with.
They sell software and they acquire some companies and their library changes over time. They were looking to find a better way to be able to track their product lifecycle, and doing that within the context of a deal and line items wasn't enough. That was one piece. The other piece was, since it's so specific with software and what type of software someone might be purchasing, they had an issue with ownership, and ownership often changes. So they can't have the product be assigned to the same owner of the contact, the same owner of the company. It's not that clean. You could have multiple contacts at a company who are from different departments who need products that are of different expertise. And so ownership sometimes changes, or a rep might be working with someone and realize you don't really need to be talking to me, you need to talk to someone else. So they wanted to be able to follow that pretty cleanly and before the deal process would begin.
So, the owner of the product is not always the same as the person who is leading the sales process.
Correct. Might not even be the same as the person who's owning the deal if there's multiple products on a deal.
So, how are they handling this process prior to Aptitude 8 coming in?
It was just a lot of confusion with those handoffs. They would miss a lot of sales because they may not realize someone was talking to the wrong person. And so a particular product might just fall through the cracks because they weren't able to really work that product. And since everything was pretty much tied to that deal level, you might be working with someone without complete knowledge and expertise to be able to really help you out. I don't know how often they might have had multiple deals then for the products, having to separate those out, but they wanted to be able to make this more streamlined. So if I'm contacting you and I want two or three different products, I'm not bouncing around between different people because of that at one time.
Definitely a negative experience for the customer and also probably a lot of unrealized revenue happening there.
Yeah. And a lot of confusion then. And so then they had a hard time tracking it because they wouldn't necessarily know why a product would fall off or anything was even happening in the pipeline, because if something never made it to a deal, then they wouldn't even know about it.
Okay, cool. Well, tell me a little bit about the solution that we created for this, and then we can jump into a demo.
So what we did was we made a custom object called product of interest. And when a contact filled out a form on a website indicating any interest in these products, a record is created for each of the products that they want, and it's associated then to that contact. Then, as the contact is associated to a company or associated to a deal, those products follow them. Having them as custom objects allows for reporting of them from the first time there's interest shown. And at any point along that life cycle of that deal, we can track when the product became a product of interest. It might be at birth, like it might be at the contact birth. It might be further on down the deal where they realize, well, I might be interested in product X. And so they add that to the deal. So there's a lot of reporting now that can happen along product lines for this. As a person moves from working with the contact, working with the product, rolling into a deal or not, and then proceeding along the deal, every product of interest has its own status and stage, has its own pipeline. It can be added or subtracted from the deal as you go along, regardless of the deal itself. If the deal is lost or the deal is won, individual products might have their own status. For example, might win a deal that originally started with three products but finished with only one. So two of those fall off as a loss and one of them stays on as a win. And you can see how it performed the entire way through.
There's a lot more functionality here than what is built into HubSpot's default products object.
A lot of automation, yes. And a lot of automation behind the scenes, because the product of interest is sometimes responding to what happens with the deal, but it's sometimes driving what happens with the deal. So the rep has flexibility in how they're managing that. And a lot of associations that need to be created or dissolved based on what happens with the product along the way. So we use associate for a lot of that.
Very cool. Okay, can you show us how this actually works?
Yep. So Darth Vader, he filled out a form a little while ago and decided that he was interested in two products of interest, Nebula and Article Galaxy. So on the form, it's simply a checkbox. You just check off what product they're currently using, what they're interested in. Anything that they're interested in becomes a product of interest then when they hit submit. Those are the two that Darth Vader indicated. So when the rep is working with him on this, what will happen is we can add a deal here. We can create a deal. So if I'm talking to Darth and Darth is like, yep, definitely interested in these two, let's move forward. Then I could create a deal and Associate will go and find those two products of interest and attach it to them. If there were 5 products and only 3 of them he was interested in, Associate will take care of that as well. So it'll attach the 5 and then drop the 2 off that are no longer needed. Or maybe he's just interested in Nebula. And so we're working in Nebula, and from Nebula, we create a deal and it's associated from that as well. And so the deal name will update itself after it's created and it finds all the information that it needs. At every deal stage, we select what products are going to continue to move forward because he could change his mind at some point. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to keep Article Galaxy and keep Nebula. We're going to go ahead and create this deal. There's not too bad of a delay here, but what's going to happen now is in the background, the deal's created. Associate is looking for the products of interest that are attached to that contact that was associated with the deal. So it's looking for Darth Vader, seeing what Darth Vader checked off here and associating those. So we have these 2 products of interest attached to this, and we are at a deal stage of analyze needs. These are active, showing that they are still currently in interest. And these in the background right now, this should be changing from lead to MQL to demo booked once I go here and I move this along. So when I move the deal along and we go to demo booked, I still have a choice every time to either continue to work with these products or I could add a new one if I wanted. So if at this point Darth Vader's like, nah, just Article Galaxy, we don't have the money, and he saves it, then what's going to happen in the background now is, and there will be a slight delay in here because we put in protections to make sure as a deal moves along and as a product moves along, it's always touching every stage so they can have some clean funnel reporting. So right now in the background, this is going from lead to MQL to demo booked. And this one right here, Nebula, just dropped off. So the next time we see this on the screen, this will say on hold. So it's not technically lost or anything. It's not inactive because it was never active. It's just on hold because maybe they'll change their mind back. So we don't want it to die and drop off before the deal is closed. This one will remain active and move along the pipeline too. So this one should not move forward beyond demo booked. And this one will continue to go.
We had a task just pop up here.
Yeah. Update POI on hold reason. That's popping up now for the owner, which I think right now is probably just me because I'm the deal owner. But they want to know, so is there not enough money? There is a property on the product of interest that has an on hold reason here. So if I go to Nebula, considering a different product, not enough budget, incorrect person, other. So we'll just say not enough budget. That way they're sure that whenever something is falling off or dropped or lost, that they know why. So it's kind of like the same as a deal close loss reason, but just for that particular product. So it's a demo booked. And what we can do here is as we go along the deal and he moves forward to demo attended, we change our mind and Nebula wants to come back in, it'll reattach it here. Or if he wants a new product that was not mentioned before and he's like, oh, what's this? This looks cool. Then a brand new one, a net new product can be added on throughout the tracking of the deal as well. So the product of interest will keep moving its stage along with the deal. When the deal goes through each stage, gets to close one or close lost, same deal. Like it'll just keep following along. At the very end, we will be able to see on a deal which products actually stayed on to go into contract and which ones dropped off and will just be part of their record keeping and part of their reporting so they can investigate what went wrong.
That is awesome. Is there any automation here to update the amount of the deal to align with the products of interest that are selected?
Not yet. I believe when the deal is getting to the point where it's closing, there's some contract work going on in the background that I wasn't part of the build for. And so that's when the line items will get pulled in. And then that's when all of the revenue reporting and all that will happen there. So the product of interest is not so much about the dollar amount and what's happening with revenue. It's more about how are the products performing themselves. The deal will still hold all of the information about the value of everything.
Can you take me on a little tour of the POI record and what information is stored there?
So originally, just so that you're aware, when you see this word asset, that was originally what we were calling the custom object. So in a lot of cases, we just didn't bother changing that name yet. So asset turned into product of interest. And when we put this in production, we'll update all of that. We're also working on ownership workflows right now. The client is working on the logic of that and how exactly that's going to flow. So this will be more automation to make sure that the product of interest is landing with the right person. We used to have automation in place that they could say no longer interested here and it would drop off the deal, but we don't think that that's actually going to be necessary anymore. one of the things that we had to do was we had to use Associate and like stamp all of the contact information to each of the products of interest so that we could continue associating it with whatever deal the contact is attached to, with whatever company the contact is attached to. So we have some automation just copying that information over here. So it's one of the like lookup fields we can use in our workflows. We added automation to date stamp everything that happens in the stage movement. So one of the little caveats that the client can kind of be aware of and pay attention to when they're really getting granular with their reporting is that when some of these movements happen in a day, it could be like I could go from a lead right to closed one if it went that smoothly of a sale and they just like jumped right in there and they knew what they were going to close here with, but it would still touch every one of those stages on that day so that we don't lose any funnel reporting.
I see that all the time with life cycle stages for contacts, and people
Yeah.
don't understand why their funnel is all messed up, and it's because people are skipping stages. So that's smart automation to include.
I do it like all of the time. And my project lead was like, "Do they ask for that?" I'm like, "Mm-mm." No, but I don't think that I don't think they know that they need it. You know, you go in and you buy this CRM and you start putting things in here and you want to see your reporting. I don't think it's a natural assumption to make that if it doesn't touch every stage, that's just going to kind of disappear in your funnel and your funnel's going to be all, jacked. So yeah, any pipeline that I work with, I try to put in that protection. The only frustrating part is to be sure that it stamps it and we put a delay in to be safe. So if this deal does go from lead to closed one in one step, it's going to take the product of interest or even the deal like 1, 2, 3, 4 solid minutes to be able to travel through to the right stage. But I think it's a small price to pay for accurate data.
Yeah. That's also why it's good to work with a solutions partner, because we've seen so many mistakes that people have made and we know how to
Yep,
fix them.
absolutely.
Jaime, thank you so much for being here. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe to Aptitude 8's YouTube channel. And if you want help managing products within HubSpot, feel free to DM me on LinkedIn.